Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Elle.K here for another video. I'm so excited because today's video was actually a request by one of you guys. It was a request from like a month and a half ago, and I'm so sorry because I don't remember who requested it. But it was to do a video on beginner fantasy recommendations. If you know me, then you know that me and fantasy have this on and off again love-hate relationship. So I feel like I've got a pretty good grasp on beginner fantasy books that I can recommend to you guys that will kind of let you dip your toe into the fantasy world without having to take like a deep dive and, you know, potentially drown. So if you're interested in hearing about some of my beginner fantasy recommendations, keep on watching. So the first one that I'm going to recommend is actually part of a trilogy, and it's the Serpent and Dove trilogy. I have the second book with me right now, Blood and Honey, because I can't find my copy of Serpent and Dove. I have all three books. I can't find the other two. But anyways, it's the Serpent and Dove trilogy by Shelby Maharin. This trilogy is just, oh, chef's kiss. So good, so much fun to kind of go along this journey. I will say before I go any further, majority of my fantasy books that I read, I do so by audiobook, just because they're usually mammoth-sized books and I just don't want to sit down and commit to physically reading that. So I will listen to audiobooks for them. I listened to the audiobook for this entire trilogy and it was absolutely phenomenal. You were following a witch and a witch hunter, and it's this enemies to lovers romance, but that is like barely a tip of the iceberg of everything that takes place throughout this series. But that's all I'm gonna say because I don't want to spoil anything. It is absolutely amazing. Trust me, just read it. The banter in it is hilarious. You've got these great strong female lead characters with an amazing bond. Like, it's just everything that could have went right with this book went right, and I loved it. So I would highly recommend the Serpent and Dove trilogy for a beginner fantasy series. The world is also not complicated. A lot of the times with fantasy worlds, with fantasy books, either the world is super complicated and very difficult to follow along with, or the magic system is super complicated and very hard to follow along with. And you don't find that in this trilogy. There's a actually really cool magic system, and it varies depending on the type of witch that you are. And there's a lot of like natural magic as well, like Mother Nature and so on and so forth. It's really dope. So I highly recommend this trilogy as a beginner fantasy series. That I have is actually, it's more of a magical realism, but I would still put it in this category of beginner fantasy because there is a magic system that is utilized within this book, and I really like it because it's one of those rare fantasies that's not an entire Bible to read, and it's a standalone because a lot of the times, again, fantasies come in either a duology, trilogy, or a full series. So this is a standalone one, and it's The Price Guide to the Occult, and it's by Leslie Walton. This is an older one. I remember just thoroughly enjoying my time reading this. The pages are, the edges are red, which is so fun. And so it's this really interesting concept because it takes place in what would be present day. We're following our main character, Nor, and she wants to just be this normal teenager, and this poor girl just can't do that. It comes out that her mom was like this really maniacal witch, and Nor just kind of wants no part of any of that, but she works in this very odd little bookstore, which while you're reading it, very much sounds like some sort of magical cavern type of thing. But she works in the store, and this mysterious book just shows up, and from there I believe she's either able to tell people's future, yeah, she's able to like predict people's futures or something along those lines. So she also has magical powers, and everything just kind of spirals out of control once her mother kind of realizes this. And it's a lot of fun. It's not a very long fantasy. I didn't explain that well at all, but a lot takes place in a very short amount of time. Like, this entire book is, good lord, it's not even 300 pages. It's 271 pages. It's so much fun, such a wild ride, and so many unexpected twists and turns that just make it a really enjoyable read. So I would highly recommend Price Guide to the Occult if you haven't had a chance to check this one out yet. The next book that I have on my list is another backlisted one, and that is Everless by Sarah Holland. This is either a duology or a trilogy. I'm not sure. I read this book a while back, and then the second one took like 2 years to come out, so I just kind of forgot about it. But I did thoroughly enjoy my time reading this one because there is a magic system and a fantastical world, both of which that are very easy to follow along with. The main gist of this book is you live in a world where time is purchased by blood, and we follow our main character Jules, whose father is either sick or dying, or I mean sick and dying. And she wants to buy him more time, but they are poor, and the only way that she can garner the funds to buy her father more time is to work at the castle where the royals live. But that comes with its own price, which I'm not going to tell you guys about because you should just go and read it because it's a lot of fun. I didn't listen to the audiobook for this one. I actually physically read it on my iPad on vacation, and I was able to get through it like that. It was a lot of fun to read. Again, lots of twists and turns, but really, really easy to follow, and I really appreciated that. The next one that I have on this list is Sky in the Deep by Adrienne Young. I love this book. It is a Viking book. It's a Viking fantasy. It's so much fun because there's not necessarily a magic system, but there's a gods system, which is really, really cool. We're following our main character, Elin, who is this warrior Viking, and she is going to war with another, like, what do you call like a group of Vikings? I don't know what you call them, but she's going to war with like another clan of Vikings. And while they're fighting, she thinks she sees not her twin brother, but her older brother fighting for the other side, which is just completely bizarre and not possible because her brother is dead. He died a few years back in another battle. So when she thinks she sees him fighting for the opposing side that would have supposedly killed him, everything just goes haywire, and it is such a fun ride. I loved this book so much. I listened to the audiobook. It was absolutely amazing. There's like this enemies to lovers romance, and then there's like the familial aspect of it, and you just have like these really badass female leads that are right in there fighting with their male counterparts, and they're better, and I loved it. This was so much fun. Highly recommend it because it is a fantasy, but and you're in a fantastical world technically, but there's no insane magic system that you have to follow. It's more of like a religious system that you're kind of following along with, and it's so cool. I really, really did enjoy this one, so I would highly recommend it. And I believe there is a sequel to this one. I think it's The Girl the Sea Gave Back or something like that, something along those lines, which was also really good. I listened to it on audiobook last year. Really, really well done. Highly recommend this one. The last one that I have physically in my hands to tell you about is Every Heart of Dory by Shauna McGuire. I have talked about this series a million times on my channel. It is the Wayward Children series, and you're following these kids who all have come back from these fantastical worlds like Narnia, and they have to cope with being back in the real world, or they're trying to hightail it back to their fantastical worlds. This series is so much fun. I loved Every Heart of Dory, but my favorite one is the second one, Down Among the Sticks and Bones. You should read Every Heart of Dory first because it carries on with characters this kind of sets the tone for the rest of the series because it introduces you to all the characters that you are going to be reading about throughout the rest of the series, which is great. I love this series because it is a fantasy. There's many different fantastical worlds, but they're short. Like, there's, I think, maybe 7 books in the series so far, but none of them are over, like, none of them touch 250 pages so far, and I love that. We love a quick read fantasy. So that would be my main reason for recommending these ones. They're short, and they're great to get you out of a reading slump as well. And then my honorable mentions would honestly be anything written by Tricia Levenseller, so Daughter of the Pirate King, Daughter of the Siren Queen, and The Shadows Between Us. Any fantasy, any book really written by Tricia Levenseller are going to be amazing beginner fantasies because they are fast-paced. The world building is usually nothing too complicated, and the magic system is usually nothing that's insanely complicated. They're more so character driven than plot driven, I would say, but the characters are really fun to follow, so I don't mind that. I kind of like a plot driven book in some cases, especially for fantasy, but in the case of Tricia Levenseller, because her characters are all phenomenal, I definitely don't mind the focus on the characters at all. But yeah, those are my recommendations for beginner fantasy books. I hope you guys found this video helpful. Let me know in the comments down below some books that you like as beginner fantasies, and we can kind of talk about it down there. Also, don't forget that it is March. be leaving your questions for my You Ask I Answer episode 3 video. That's going to be coming out at the end of the month. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe before you go, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!